Have you ever wondered why you react the way you do in your relationships? Well, it might all go back to your earliest experiences in life, even though you may not remember them. Attachment theory suggests that the emotional bonds that we form in our first few years can shape our perceptions, connections, and behaviors throughout our lives. It all begins with our attachment style, which we can kind of see like a hidden blueprint for how we relate to others. So regardless of what your attachment style is, it plays a crucial role in your adult relationships. It affects everything from how you see yourself and your partner to how you navigate intimacy and handle challenges. So in today's video, we're going to look at the 4 different attachment styles and how they each influence our adult relationships. I'll also give you some tips on how you can start transitioning towards a more secure attachment style if you don't already have one. So to understand how our childhood experiences affect our adult relationships, we first need to grasp the concept of attachment theory. Attachment theory explores the emotional bond that's formed between a child and their primary caregiver. The theory emphasizes the importance of our early childhood experiences in shaping our future relationships and behaviors. In infancy, we develop our attachment styles based on our caregiver's responsiveness and the consistency of their care. So if your primary caretaker made you feel safe and understood as an infant, if they were able to respond to your cries and accurately interpret your changing physical and emotional needs, then you'll likely develop a successful, secure attachment. As an adult, that usually translates to being self-confident and trusting, and to have the ability to manage conflicts and navigate the ups and downs of a romantic relationship. If, on the other hand, you experience confusing, frightening, or inconsistent emotional communication during infancy, if your caregiver was unable to consistently comfort you or respond to your needs, you're more likely to have experienced an unsuccessful or an insecure attachment. Infants with insecure attachments will often grow into adults who have difficulties understanding their own emotions and the feelings of others, limiting their ability to build or maintain stable relationships. They may find it difficult to connect with others, shy away from intimacy, or be too clingy, fearful, or anxious in a relationship. Research suggests that the first 2 years of a child's life are the most critical in forming the attachments. During this period, children develop an internal working model that shapes the way they view relationships and how they deal with social interactions. Now, of course, experiences that occur in between infancy and adulthood can also shape our relationships. But the infant brain is so profoundly influenced by this attachment bond, they does tend to stay with us to some degree. Now, based on our early experiences, we develop one of 4 attachment styles: secure attachment, avoidant attachment, ambivalent attachment, or disorganized attachment. Attachment style relates to the specific way that we relate to other people. Let's have a quick look at the general characteristics of each of them before looking specifically at how they tend to influence our relationships in adult life. Let's start out by looking at secure attachment, which is the most common attachment style we see in children and adults. Research suggests that about 50% of the population have a secure attachment style. If a child experiences that they can rely on the primary caregiver, they're likely to develop a secure attachment. There are 4 S's that we can use as cornerstones of what helps form a secure attachment. The child needs to feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure. A secure attachment is characterized by trust, an adaptive response to being abandoned, so that means both being upset when the primary caregiver leaves, but also feeling joy when they return to you, and the fundamental belief that you're worthy of love. What we typically see in adults with secure attachment is that they're empathetic and able to set appropriate boundaries. People with secure attachment tend to feel safe, stable, and satisfied in their close relationships. While they don't fear being alone, they usually thrive in close, meaningful relationships. Next up, let's have a look at ambivalent attachment. Ambivalent attachment is also referred to as anxious attachment, and studies suggest that about 20% of the population have this attachment style. This is caused when an infant learns that the primary caregiver is unreliable and doesn't consistently provide responsive care towards their needs. As a result of this poor parental availability, the children learn that they can't rely on their parents to be there when they really need them. Adults with an ambivalent attachment tend to be overly needy. People with this attachment style are often anxious and uncertain, lacking in self-esteem. They tend to crave emotional intimacy, but worry that other people don't want to be with them. Now, moving on to the avoidant attachment. Studies suggest that about 25% of the population have an avoidant attachment. Children with an avoidant attachment tend to avoid their parents or their primary caregiver, showing no or very little preference between the caregiver and a complete stranger. This attachment style may be a result of neglectful or abusive caregivers. Children who are punished for relying on the caregivers will learn to not seek out help in the future. Adults with an avoidant insecure attachment are the opposite of people who have an ambivalent attachment. Instead of craving intimacy, they're so wary of closeness that they avoid emotional connections with others. They'd rather not rely on other people or have other people rely on them. The fourth and final attachment style is disorganized attachment. This is the rarest attachment style, and studies suggest that about 5% of the population have it. This attachment style tends to develop if the child sees inconsistent caregiver behavior. When the caregiver switches between being the source of comfort and fear, it makes it difficult for the child to predict the caregiver's behavior. So children with a disorganized attachment style can seem confused, dazed, or disoriented. Disorganized attachment is also referred to as fearful avoidant attachment, and it tends to stem from intense fear, often a result of childhood trauma. Adults with this attachment style tend to feel that they don't deserve closeness, intimacy, or love in a relationship. So according to John Bowlby, who developed the attachment theory in the 50s, when we form our primary attachment, we also make a mental representation of what a relationship is. We refer to this as an internal working model. Now, we use that internal working model that we form in our early infancy in all our future relationships. This goes for both friendships, working relationships, and romantic relationships. So the different attachment styles can be seen as different types of working models for relationships that are based on previous experiences. And it's through these internal working models that childhood experiences are carried forward into adult relationships. So we'll typically see that our underlying attachment style, our internal working model, will make us likely to behave in a certain way or to feel in a certain way when we're in a relationship, especially when that relationship comes under pressure or is threatened. Now let's have a look at some of the characteristics of each attachment style in adult relationships. Let's start with the secure attachment again. Now, having a secure attachment style doesn't mean that you're perfect or that you won't experience relationship problems, but it does likely mean that you feel secure enough to take responsibility for your own mistakes and failings in the relationship, and that you're willing to and able to seek out help when needed. Some of the main characteristics that we see in a relationship with someone with a secure attachment are: you appreciate your own self-worth and you're able to be yourself in an intimate relationship. You're comfortable expressing your feelings, hopes, and needs. You find satisfaction in being with others, openly seeking support and comfort from your partner, but don't get overly anxious when the two of you are apart. You're similarly happy for your partner to rely on you for support. You're able to maintain your emotional balance and seek healthy ways to manage conflict in a close relationship. And when faced with disappointment, setbacks, and misfortune in your relationship, as well as in other parts of your life, you're resilient enough to bounce back. Some people may identify with some but not all of the characteristics of secure attachment in relationships. Even if your relationships are stable overall, it's possible that you have some specific patterns of behavior or thinking that cause conflict with your partner and that need to be actively addressed. Try to see if you can relate to any of the aspects or characteristics of any of the insecure attachment styles that we'll go through. Let's look at the ambivalent attachment style. If you have an ambivalent attachment style, you may feel embarrassed about being too clingy or your constant need for love and attention. Or you may feel worn down and exhausted from worrying whether your partner really loves you. Some of the general characteristics that we see for this ambivalent attachment style are: you want to be in a relationship and crave feelings of closeness and intimacy with a significant other, but you struggle to feel that you can trust or fully rely on your partner. Being in an intimate relationship tends to take over your life and you become overly fixated on the other person. You may find it difficult to observe boundaries, viewing space between you as a threat, something that can provoke panic, anger, or fear that your partner no longer wants you. A lot of your sense of self-worth rests on how you feel you're being treated in the relationship, and you tend to overreact to any perceived threats to the relationship. You feel anxious or jealous when you're away from your partner, and you may use guilt, controlling behavior, or any other manipulative tactics to keep them close. You need constant reassurance and lots of attention from your partner. And others may criticize you for being too needy or clingy, and you may struggle to maintain close relationships. Next up, let's look at the avoidant attachment style. If you're someone with an avoidant attachment style, you find it difficult to tolerate emotional intimacy. You value your independence and freedom to the point where you can feel uncomfortable with the intimacy and closeness of a romantic relationship. Some other characteristics of someone with an avoidant attachment style in a relationship are: you're an independent person, content to care for yourself, and you don't feel like you need others. The more someone tries to get close to you, or the needier a partner becomes, the more you tend to withdraw. You're uncomfortable with your emotions, and partners often accuse you of being distant and closed off, rigid and intolerant. In return, you accuse them of being too needy. You're prone to minimize or disregard your partner's feelings, keep secrets from them, engage in affairs, and even end relationships in order to regain your sense of freedom. You may prefer fleeting, casual relationships to long-term, intimate ones. Or you seek out partners who are equally independent, ones who will keep the distance emotionally. And while you may think that you don't need close relationships or intimacy, the truth is we all do. Humans are hardwired for connections, and deep down, even someone with an avoidant attachment style wants a close, meaningful relationship. If only they could overcome that deep-seated fear of intimacy. The final attachment style is the disorganized attachment. If you have a disorganized attachment style, you've likely never learned to self-soothe, so both relationships and the world around you can feel frightening and unsafe. Let's have a look at some of the general characteristics for someone with a disorganized attachment style in adult relationships. You probably find intimate relationships confusing and unsettling, often swinging between emotional extremes of love and hate for your partner. You may be insensitive towards your partner, selfish, controlling, and untrusting, which can lead to explosive or even abusive behavior. And you can be just as hard on yourself as you are on others. You may exhibit antisocial or negative behavior patterns, abuse alcohol or drugs, or be prone to aggression or violence. Others may despair at your refusal to take responsibility for your actions. While you crave the security and safety of a meaningful, intimate relationship, you also feel unworthy of love and terrified of getting hurt again. And finally, your childhood may have been shaped by abuse, neglect, or trauma. And if that is the case, then we sometimes see that we may try to replicate some of those abusive patterns of behavior as an adult. If you do recognize this in yourself, then I strongly encourage you to seek out professional help so you can start working on dealing with that underlying trauma. Now, it's important to know that if you do recognize any of these characteristics of insecure attachment in either yourself or your partner, that doesn't mean that it always needs to stay like that. It is possible to actively work towards a change, and you can start developing a more secure attachment as an adult. Therapy can be really helpful in helping you work through some of the experiences from your childhood and for helping you transition to a more secure attachment. Therapy can either be working one-on-one with a therapist, or it can be working along with your partner and a therapist. If you don't want therapy or you don't have access to therapy, there are some things you can start to do on your own to start building a more secure attachment style. To start, learn all you can about your own insecure attachment. The more you understand, the easier it will be to recognize and correct any behaviors or attitude that you may experience as a result of your attachment. Here are 4 tips that can help you transition to a more secure attachment. The first one is to improve your nonverbal communication skills. Nonverbal communication is a super important part of any relationship. It was important in your first early relationship with your primary caregiver that formed your attachment style, and it's also important now in your adult relationships. Even though you may not be aware of it, when you interact with others, you're constantly giving and receiving wordless signals. So this is through the gestures you make, your posture, and how much eye contact you make. These non-verbal cues send strong messages about how you're really feeling. At any age, developing how well you read, interpret, and communicate non-verbally can help improve and deepen your relationship with others. You can learn to improve these skills by being present in the moment, managing your stress, and developing your own emotional awareness. The second tip is to boost your emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in positive ways to empathize with your partner, communicate more effectively, and deal with conflict in a healthier way. By understanding your emotions and how to control them, you'll be better able to express your needs and feelings to your partner. And it'll make it easier to understand how your partner is really feeling too. As an added bonus, boosting your emotional intelligence will also help you improve how well you read and use those non-verbal cues that we talked about before. The third tip is to develop relationships with people who are securely attached. Being in a relationship with another person who also has an insecure attachment can make for a union that's out of sync at best, but rocky, confusing, and even painful at worst. If you're already in a relationship with someone with an insecure attachment, you can work through your insecurities together. But if you are single, you may want to look for a partner who has a secure attachment style. This can help you shift away from the patterns of negative thinking and behaving. A strong, supportive relationship with someone who makes you feel loved can play an important role in building your sense of security. It can also be really helpful to develop strong friendships with people with secure attachments so that can help you recognize and adopt new patterns of behavior. And the fourth and final tip is to resolve any childhood trauma. As I said earlier in the video, experiencing trauma as an infant or a young child can interrupt the attachment and bonding process. When childhood trauma is not resolved, feelings of fear, insecurity, and helplessness can continue long into adulthood. Even if your trauma occurred many years ago, there are steps you can take to overcome the pain, regain your emotional balance, and learn to trust and connect in relationships again. If you have any unresolved childhood trauma, I strongly encourage you to seek out help. You can speak to your doctor or a mental health professional who will be able to guide you and help you through. Whatever your relationship problems, it's important to know that your brain remains capable of change throughout your life. By identifying and knowing your attachment style, you can learn to challenge your insecurities, develop a more securely attached way of relating to others, and build stronger, healthier, and more fulfilling relationships. I upload new psychological insights, tips, and tools on this channel every week. If you're not already, I'd love for you to subscribe so we can meet again. Thank you for watching this one. Take care, and bye for now.